So anyways, wow, cool. We actually have quite a few people here tonight. So that's great for Brad Cain to talk about being a C. I guess you're I'm not sure what you are. To being a whatever you are for ERC. So that'll be one of the questions. What exactly are you? But anyways, so if you don't know Silicon Dojo, if you're new here, basically the concept is I've been doing tech education on YouTube since 2009. The social media world is even worse than most people realize from a business standpoint, regardless of everything else. And so basically my idea was, hey, what if we did YouTube but in the real world? So I've had people all around the world literally come up to me and say thank you for the work that I've done on YouTube. And so, you know, again, it's that idea of, hey, can we do a hands-on, free to the end user technology education program here in Asheville that basically, if you're interested in technology, you come and learn, and that's literally it. There are no grades, there is no pass-fail. If you're slow, you're slow. If you're fast, you're fast, and that's what's going on. So one of the big problems that I've seen dealing with my students for 14 years now is people get all these certifications and they get all this education and they know API calls and they know replication strategies and all that, and they still have no idea why the hell they actually get paid. They'll get their master's degree and have no clue why they get paid. And so one of the things that I want to do with Silicon Dojo is do these fireside chats and other of these types of events to bring in real technology professionals that are actually hiring, that are actually building here, and have them explain how they see the world. Because I think I had one of my viewers, and he was questioning me years ago, and it was like, Eli, I have my master's degree in IT, I have my MCSE, I have my CCNA, what do I need to do next to get a job? I was like, get a damn job, what's wrong with you? But literally, we have a society where we focus on education and certificates, and we literally have students nowadays that don't know when to stop. So anyways, so that's what we're trying to do here with these fireside chats. Just so everybody knows, again, being free to the end user, we've been trying to figure out the business plan for a while, so we are now going to be a 501c3. Hopefully by the end of this week, I'm meeting with a lawyer this week, so we'll be a corporation by the end of this week, and depending on how the IRS is, we will be able to get donations hopefully in the next couple of months, so maybe in October. So if you know any high net worth individuals or low net worth individuals, basically anybody with some extra money in their pocket, we could definitely use it. This stuff actually does cost some money. We do have our board members here today, very excited to say. We have Steve as a board member and Tomer as a board member. So feel free to bribe them. They like good food, they like good alcohol. I just, you know, whatever. Let's see, just so everybody knows, we do classes every Tuesday. That's the educational component. The next class is we're doing OpenCV, so it's a computer vision framework for Python. We're actually going to be teaching that. It'll be a 2 to 3 hour class in next couple of days, so again, next Tuesday. And at the end of the month, we're going to have our first 2-day camp, and so it's going to be Python and AI. So on Saturday morning will be introduction to Python, afternoon will be the ChatGPT API, Sunday will be introduction to Django, which is a web app framework in Python in the morning, and then in the afternoon, the students will be building AI-powered web apps, essentially. And so we already have about 6 or 7 people signed up for that. If you're interested, or if you know anybody who would be interested, again, everything is basically designed to bring you along and let you know what's going on, figure things out. Yeah, and so that's it. So Brad, if you want to come up. Yeah. So I'll take off my obnoxious shirts. I'm looking more like you. Do you want me to take off my obnoxious shirt? I will just say for everybody at home, I do not know how this is going to go. This might go very weirdly. Okay. So you have your dry erase markers, that's important. Okay, get up here. Okay. So the first question, since this will be on YouTube, and you'll be seen by thousands and thousands and thousands of people, one of the most important questions you will ever answer. What is your daily driver? What is the main computer that you use to do your work? And there is a wrong answer.
The main computer that I use?
Yes.
My iPad Pro. Hands down, no questions asked. It is what I use for most everything, and then I pull out my Microsoft Surface.
That I would not have expected, really. Why do you like that over the, if you actually own a Surface, why use that as a primary thing over the Surface?
I think that my safe space, my comfortable spot with a computer is the Microsoft world. It is Windows, and I love the overall just form factor, touch screen, power, yada yada yada. It works. It works. It's a solid portable machine.
Okay, so let's go into ERC Broadband. So, okay, first thing, are you a CEO? Again, you were so confusing to figure out all this stuff. So it says like you're CEO, but then you're like general manager, and then I'm like, Steve, and he's like, yeah, he's CEO. Love of God, what are you?
I'm the general manager.
Okay, is that what you are?
You know what? It makes me sound like I'm still doing work. Yes, that makes sense.
So are you actually a CEO that wants to be called a general manager, or are you? Because there's nobody above you, right?
Correct. So you know, a title is a title. The fact is, you know, I work with an amazing team, and we all have roles. We all have functions. We all support one another, but there is no crazy pecking order. I don't personally like the term CEO. I don't want it.
Fair enough, fair enough. Oh yeah, when you talk, make sure it's up by like an ice cream cone. There we go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's very serious, very serious. We had a horrible microphone accident a little while ago. It was bad. It took like 2 hours for me just to...
How did you get it out?
It was horrible. Vaseline, and anyways, bad stuff. Anyway, no, but I think that's an interesting, especially for people at home, is nowadays everybody kind of inflates their title. Again, you'll have one kid in their basement with a website and they're CEO. And like it really, and so I think that's just an interesting thing that you could be CEO, but you reject the CEO.
No, I try as much as possible to get engaged, get involved with whatever work I can help out with. Some days I have to perform more corporate functions. You know, sure, that's corporate manager, GM, CEO-ish, but I'll also be the guy that drives down to Atlanta, racks and stacks equipment, connects up jumpers, turns up new circuits, and do that in the middle of the night so that my team members don't have to do it. I perform a function.
Fair enough.
And it changes day to day.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, and so then when we're talking about ERC Broadband, and I was trying to do research on it, again, I'm not quite sure what I was even looking at, right? So, because you were a nonprofit, now you're not a nonprofit, explain to us what ERC Broadband actually looks like as a company.
So ERC Broadband is a community fiber network. It is an LLC. It is still driven by the same mission, vision as when it was a 501c3 charity not-for-profit operation. But it is a regional fiber network that serves Western North Carolina to help expand broadband opportunities to help improve the adoption of technology across the region for all of us.
So with that, do you actually provide last mile, so basically to the premises broadband, or are you a connector for basically other ISPs to provide that last mile?
Yes and yes. So we do provide last mile services to buildings and, you know, to businesses and to community anchor institutions. We also provide connectivity to ISPs, carriers, providers across the region and into and out of the region, all the way from Macon County up to Allegheny County. So, you know, we've got a decent little span that we serve.
So is that's your fiber that you've laid then?
Oh, there is a significant portion of it that is laid and the cable sheath is owned by ERC Broadband. But in this industry, it's really kind of cool. It is based upon cooperation, partnership, and there is also competition amongst the carriers. You know, my network architect uses a term called co-opetition. We compete with one another, we work together. The sum of the overall ecosystem is much greater than we could ever hope to achieve individually, though. So, in some cases, we will swap fiber with other providers. We will lease fiber from others. We will let them lease on our network. We work to try to create a patchwork across the region so that we can all interconnect and do more together.
So then how do you figure that out? So, like, if you're thinking about a normal business, and you're like, am I going to go to this neighborhood? I think most people understand that. Like, with these fiber lines that you own or lease or what, like, how do you decide to go from point A to point B?
So the fact is unless a customer, whether it's a service provider, a county, a community anchor institution, a business, comes up and says, I need service, I will pay market rate, can you serve me? And then we get a project going to serve them on a discrete project basis. The way that it works most of the time is we work for months and years developing plans to grow our network, to interconnect with other partners or potential partners to help grow the overall picture so that we can serve them, so that we can work with them to help serve other groups that maybe they've never considered working with before. So sometimes that will involve, leasing fiber in between, our network and another network. Sometimes it involves building sections of fiber between those networks. But it'll take, in some cases, years of slow, methodical planning. And it's, this is, we talk about broadband being this human right, an essential good that everybody should have. And the answer is yes, we really should. But it is not a snap of the fingers, all of a sudden, if money drops from the sky, it just happens in the next 6 months. It's a situation where the construction itself can take months on end, if not years. The easements, the DOT encroachments, the whole application process, the permits to cross railroads or the parkway, can take months or years to get those green lights, much less trying to get them all to match up together. So this is a long game to try to build out the infrastructure that's going to benefit, our community, our region, the overall picture for our long-term gain. So it's kind of something that we just constantly work on as a team and working with others in the region. In a lot of cases, they are our competitors. But if they are the better people either to help serve a particular community or to help interconnect with us to help serve somebody out there, we will partner or we will hand off opportunities to others to try to make that happen.
So with the permitting, so we've all heard about the disaster permitting, and we've heard this with pipelines and things, but everybody seems to politically agree we need more internet. This seems to be pretty bipartisan. So after 20 years or however long, has the permitting process for this gotten better at all? Because it sounds like you're still going through a lot of stupidity at this point. It seems like it should have been streamlined.
I don't know if I'd call it stupidity. I mean, to a large degree.
Idiocy, there's other words for it.
I mean, let's think about it in some very simple terms. In front of this building, we have a string of poles that go from Patton Avenue down to Hilliard along the road. What happens if people just start, doing through holes to put bolts to start running strand, hanging wire, or who knows what on those poles without proper engineering? I mean, the fact is, those poles will break. We forget about some very simple static load engineering in our daily lives when it comes to bridges, when it comes to poles, when it comes to roads. We use them, we appreciate them passively, but the fact is if we do not take care of them, they will break, and our lives and businesses and our education and everything will be interrupted. So, there's something to be said for, just the process that has to take place, unfortunately, to make sure that things don't break. You start looking at just the weight of cable, but on a 200 to 300 foot span. And however many cables are on that span, on different, points along the pole, it can be significant weight pulling down between those two wooden sticks. If that route happens to go around a corner, you also have to consider, offsetting the load that's going to try to pull those cables and the pole into, the arc. So you've got to offset it with down guys and anchors into the ground. So it's a process. No, don't be mistaken. Do I wish the process went faster? Do I think it could go faster? The answer is yes, but it's a monumental effort on a day in, day out basis. With all of the fiber construction and the build-outs going on right now, I try to be appreciative of everything that everybody in the process is doing to help move, the rock forward just a little bit.
So you're talking about all these companies in this competition, which is amazing because as a consumer, I don't see it. I get Spectrum or DSL. So what's going on there? Is there just competition in these connections? Like, why is there not more competition in the actual last mile to my house? Like, why can't I get ERC to my house right now if I wanted to?
I don't know where you live, and I'm not asking you to tell me your address on live YouTube. But the fact is it is incredibly expensive to run new infrastructure out and about. You have, we'll call it the big boys that may have massive amounts of money, but they have massive amounts of money that they are deploying across not just this region, but across the entire country, in some cases the globe. And invariably, I think that shareholders want to make sure that there's a solid return. So they're going to look to corporate leadership to help make sure that that happens. which typically means denser populations or where there's no competition and they can get 100% penetration or 80% penetration, something along those lines. What I think a lot of people in Western North Carolina don't realize is how much of a very active grassroots effort we have had in this region with small ISPs starting up, growing their networks in their communities, whether it's up in Marshall, whether it's out in Silva, Highlands, Brevard, up in Newland, helping to take care of their own individual communities. It doesn't happen everywhere. It doesn't take care of the problem in the far nooks and crannies of the region. But, we try, and I've been with ERC Broadband for 12 to 13 years. I have tried actively and proactively to help foster network connectivity across this region, to help, startup ISPs get off the ground, to help them grow into either adjacent, footprints, or to help, mid-sized carriers enter the region so that they can, provide some competition, whether it's in, cities here in Western North Carolina or to go out deeper. And it does happen. It does not happen as fast as we all would like it to happen. And when it comes to why can't you get ERC broadband out at your home, a lot of it comes down to money. I mean, if there was unlimited money and multiple providers getting it, yes, the region, the country would be blanketed with multiple fiber options to each and every home. In the meantime, I've got the rest of my life to work on it.
So, but why have the big corporations? So, the big corporations, most places you're at, it's either monopoly or duopoly. Duopoly if you're doing good. So, why haven't they just crushed you in these longer connections? So, if they own the residential and the business market, why don't they also why are you allowed to exist essentially?
I think that ERC Broadband provides amazing service, but not only customer service, but also reliability, network service. We're more generally speaking, we'll call it flexible and nimble. We do that with an amazing team that has been, grown over the course of time, and that I'm grateful, to be a part of their day in, day out lives. And that's really what it comes down to. You also have to have wonderful partners that will work with you day in and day out, in some cases in the middle of the night because you need help. But yeah, it's we've grown because we provide really good service, and I will never say that we shoot to be the low price provider, but we will always provide. We will do anything and everything we can at the most honest price that we can. And if anything ever goes wrong, we're also honest about it. That goes a long way, mind you.
Okay, so when did ERC get created? How old are you guys?
So the ERC Broadband project was initially created back in 2002. And it's, I suppose, 20 to 21 years old now in one way, shape, or form. So, ERC Broadband LLC, was created, 2 to 3 years ago.
And so what was the point of creating? So this is 20 years ago. So why was ERC Broadband created? Again, why didn't a Spectrum or Verizon or whoever else do whatever it is you're doing?
Now, it's a little bit before my time, but so the story goes that, former Congressman Taylor, who did a lot of good, within Western North Carolina, as well as, adjacent, congressional footprint. He wanted to make sure that our colleges and universities here in Western North Carolina had this next generation fiber thing, connecting up the schools so that they could, be competitive from a technology perspective with, schools in larger markets. And, he also wanted to make sure that, institutions like the National Climactic Data Center had connectivity that would help to, not only keep that organization here, but help it to grow here. And, you scroll back 20 plus years, and T1s were still prolific in the business world. The S3s, if you were lucky, you might get, something along those lines, which is roughly, we'll call it 50 megabits per second. And then if you were really, really lucky, you might be able to get something a little bit bigger. So I remember being out in Seattle Metro back in, I think it was 98, when Microsoft got its first OC192. So, which is 10 gigabits per second, approximately. And, now, those, I don't want to call them, a dime a dozen, but those circuits are very common, much more common than they were 10 years ago. But yeah, it's a, the bandwidth requirements, not only to customers, but, on the backbone networks, they've increased tremendously. And trying to, help plan for that, it's a huge issue. We talk about, you asked earlier, how do you choose to serve? Well, it's not just that last mile piece, but it's the overall network management. It's trying to make sure that you have enough capacity so that no customer will ever realize what we call contention or congestion on the network. And not only into, one's own network, but then also leaving the network either to go to a peer or to the internet.
So I guess that's a question. With these lines that you're laying now, how many gigabits per second or terabits per second? Like, what is the max of your current fiber lines?
I don't think that there is we have not yet realized as a human race what fiber is capable of. You can get terabits per second off of a single pair of fiber. It all comes down to, how fast the lasers shoot. And yes, on a daily basis, I get to play with lasers. If the network team lets me. But then, there's also things that we call, waving. So you can overlay multiple wavelengths of signal onto a single pair of fiber, or onto a single fiber for that matter. And so, right now, I think we've got, I think our largest trunk line at the moment is passing. It's probably half a terabit. So, but that's all that we need. So we try to make sure that we plan, for network growth, we plan for the future, but we do not overspend because, the capital, for overspending can be deployed elsewhere to do more good inside the region.
Fair enough. So then when you're looking at your company, like with employees and contractors, what do the employees and contractors look like? Do you actually employ cable installers and such, or is that subcontracted out? Like, how many employees do you have?
So we have a total, I believe, of 18 employees, and we've got installers, we've got network engineers, we have plant engineers, we've got account management, salespeople. We've got, a couple of people helping out on, more of the administrative side. There's this one guy who doesn't like titles that kind of runs around and fills whatever role is needed on a given day. But, as far as actual fiber construction, almost all of that is performed by our master fiber contractor. And they also, do most all the splicing, for us, and they take incredibly good care of us, and we're grateful, for their day in and day out partnership. They've been with us, pretty much since the beginning, and I appreciate them immensely. That we treat our, you say contractors. The fact is, our closest contractors, they are a part of our team. So, and I like to think, try to treat them as such. So,
Fair enough. And like, how much fiber do you lay per year? Do you figure that?
Right now it's. I think on an average year right now, we're doing dozens of miles of, between trunk line and laterals and access connections, dozens of miles per year. I don't think this year that we're necessarily on track for 100+ miles, but we're also not doing, we're not doing a whole bunch of, neighborhoods or developments. We're helping, some other providers get connections so that they can do more of that last mile. But, and we're doing some of that as well, just not to the same degree.
Is that, when you say dozens of miles, is that a lot to you? Like when you look at ERCs, like, yes, we did dozens of miles. Or is it like, we did dozens of miles? Like, would you want 200 miles in a year?
So, good question. I think if I could snap my fingers, have all the money in the world, and just build out, for example, Western North Carolina, I'd love it. The amount of scaling that I'd have to do to run thousands of miles over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, I think I want to be more strategic in the market, to be honest with you. Dozens of miles equates to millions of dollars of community infrastructure investment. When you don't have, when you're not a public company, you can't just go to Wall Street and just say, hey, here's 10 million shares more being issued. I want billions of dollars rained upon my bank account. When you don't have private equity, investors that are trying to get you to grow, and grow exponentially so that there's a next step. You know what? What I want is I want long-term sustainable growth. And a few $1 million in investment annually to help grow this region it's very sustainable. Would I like more? Yeah. Do I want to have an organization of 200 employees where I don't know the individuals personally? I don't know their families. I can't connect with them. I don't know if I want to be there again. You know, I've worked for a Fortune 10 company in this industry, got a lot of wonderful experience. I was heavily involved in my team, in my employees' lives, but I want to work for a very personal and intimate organization for the rest of my career.
That's actually an interesting thing, since you brought it up. So we try to do wiffle ball here, but sometimes it's fast wiffle ball. So, well, no, I've talked with a lot of people here, and I've talked with a lot of people that have come to Asheville and are now leaving Asheville because of how slow and kind of plodding this is. And it's interesting for you as a CEO of an ISP, not a computer repair shop, but an ISP, to basically say you don't want 200 employees. Like, is that a weird thing about Asheville? Because there is this discussion about the tech community in Asheville, and there does seem to be very much of, I want a dozen employees, and then I'm good. Am I reading things wrong in Asheville, or is that kind of how it is around here?
I am a single data point. but also in telecom, if you have a well-oiled machine, like operation, that's low maintenance, that's highly reliable, you don't need, we could probably quadruple our revenue and go from 18 to 25, maybe 30 employees total. So, we're not talking about necessarily going slow. It's just smart, sustainable. And, to be honest, in an ideal situation, I'd rather not, I don't want for us to sell our souls. So, and I think the community as well as our customers know who we are, appreciate who we are, and want to work with us for that reason.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like I say, with the growth of the tech sector in Asheville, because it does seem to be like a lot of people, I say, they want to get to a certain level, but it's a pretty small level that a lot of folks want to get to. And so then that's the question. If we have, our economy is 90% tourism, which I think we all agree is a bad idea, but then what happens if none of the other industries actually want to grow past their 10%? So I was curious. So then when you're laying the fiber and all that, so we've all been hearing about 5G and Starlink. So you are going to go bankrupt next year, as far as Elon Musk has said this, because of Starlink. So when you see these other technologies that are coming down the pike, why are you wasting your time with fiber?
Well, I think at the end of the day, 5G is wonderful. Cell companies still need fiber optic connections to cell towers and to microcell sites. I look forward to helping them with that. And realistically, I think that Starlink is, I think that Starlink is an amazing platform for certain applications. I do not know what it's going to end up looking like 5, 10 years from now. But at the end of the day, a terrestrial cable, connection, fiber optic connection, is still going to be more reliable from a bandwidth as well as a network service perspective, from, latency, jitter, uptime, yada, 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 than anything wireless. So my network architect, will say first and foremost that he cannot guarantee the air. And it's true. It is absolutely true. I think there's a place for wireless technologies, for, low orbit satellite connectivity. But you also have to remember, almost all of that is, it's for consumer and specific business applications. Do you want to risk the latency or jitter or uptime when it comes to robotic surgery that would come with a satellite connection? If a cloud comes over the hospital, I don't think so. So community anchor institutions, public safety, 911, whether it's fire stations, who knows? They will continue, I think, to require the reliability, the uptime, that fiber provides. So, and realistically, I think that almost anyone everywhere would prefer to have the more assured bandwidth if they can get fiber to the business, fiber to the home, fiber to the whatever. If it's possible, they would rather pay for that.
And have you thought about last mile? Are you guys actually offering last mile, like wireless service, point-to-point wireless, or any of that?
Not wireless.
No, we do not do wireless.
Okay. No, we played around. We've had a couple of field applications, and our network engineers like to lab and test things, but we have always reverted back at the end of the day to saying, all right, for our customers, we feel so much more comfortable with providing fiber optic connections. You think about it, ERC Broadband, we don't have a tier 1 desk over in India or anything along those lines, not even here locally. What we have is, you call in, you get a network engineer, a seasoned network engineer who answers the phone and takes care of your issue. It's not a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If, person X or Y or Z can't take care of it, you get somebody who is going to help you assist with your issue. Chances are it's, it's not an issue with our network. But, if it is, we will address it and remediate it ASAP. So when it comes to wireless, with anything that would cause more potential calls to come in, trouble tickets or anything else, I think my team would they'd rather work on improving the network as opposed to having maintenance tickets come in. So they have much more fun working on projects and provisioning, and honestly doing a little bit of dev and R&D work, more than working with customers who are not happy with their service.
Fair enough. How do you deal with business clients that have crappy networks and complain about the internet connection?
They have crappy networks. Honestly, we tend to help. We try to coach them, and when we can't coach them, we try to, refer them to an MSP, an IT support group here in the area. One of many. We try to help, refer around and match up based upon, what market it's in, what the personality fit is, and everything else.
Cool. And then, so with this, you're laying the fiber. So what vendors do you use for the hardware? So again, like with the normal networking, we're used to Cisco or such. Like who are the hardware vendors in the ISP space?
We are a predominantly Cisco shop. So, but the Cisco gear that we buy is a little bit different than the small and medium business, out there. Our routers, I don't even want to tell you what the list price of them is. It's ridiculous. And then what we pay for them is still ridiculous, but less ridiculous than list price. But we use carrier grade network equipment from predominantly Cisco. We also use Sienna equipment, and we've got a couple of other vendors out there. I think we still have some Adva optical gear, and yeah.
Is like Cisco the cool one? Because we just had Kemper come in, and he runs an MSP, and he was saying they used to do Cisco, and now they went over to whatever HP turned into. And what they found is for half the price, basically get all the functionality you actually need. Like Cisco has so much more functionality that you're not actually going to use. So like with you guys, when you're buying Cisco, are you actually using Cisco for everything that it's worth? Or is there actually a value to having that brand name?
So there is a big difference between carrier grade equipment and everything else. Even enterprise or data center equipment. And you don't necessarily have to go with Cisco per se, but there's probably 3, maybe 4 brands that you really want to look at total, and not for their lines of equipment across the board. I mean, Juniper makes, for example, very solid routers, but you are not going to get, I would not recommend them for other lines of equipment. Sienna, carrier carrier Ethernet, yes. Optical, absolutely. Cisco has a very solid, range of platforms within the carrier space. If you try to go to, we'll call it, and mind you, when it comes to the access network, consumer, access network, Calix, Nokia, Adtran, they all make solid, XPON solutions. Whether it's GPON, XGS-PON, NG-PON2, you name it. They all make solid platforms. But, would I recommend those lines for other types, of equipment? Not for our network. So, but you start going downstream in the carrier Ethernet space, and you very quickly you will get bit in the butt.
Right. So when we started banning the Huawei equipment, did that affect your world at all for you guys?
No.
Does Huawei make fiber? Like, could it have if you had decided to use it, or they're just not in your world?
Oh no, I think that they make equipment that is, in a lot of ways, in certain parts of the world, is competitive with Cisco, Sienna, Juniper. It just, I don't think we ever considered it.
And then, so for your technical support staff, so you're talking about a lot of this networking equipment isn't necessarily what most people even know exists. So where do you actually find your technical employees to deal with that kind of stuff?
Predominantly AB Tech.
Really?
Yes, sir. we tend to work with the professors over at AB Tech, get recommendations from them, and take in what I would like to think is their greatest and brightest minds, bring them in and teach them everything they don't know. But we try to find good cultural fits. That's the key. That's the key to any organization: is find people who are going to work well within your organization, and that's going to drink the juice, make the juice, try to give it to other people. but ultimately, people's ability to learn and grow and to want to, that's the key. And we've got an amazing senior staff and a really, really amazing, I can't really call them mid-level staff, because they're doing a lot of the day in, day out work, a lot of some high-level troubleshooting and network configuration. They're doing senior level work, and growing more and more comfortable with it. And what we try to do is we try to bring junior level engineers and grow them into that mid-level role. And yeah, we've found that on-the-job training is more valuable than anything else.
So then with the property market kind of going bad crap in Asheville then, so if you're actually hiring locals and trying to keep locals, how has that affected your business with trying to afford people that can to actually buy houses around here?
We try to hire good people. We try to pay them well. We try to grow their salaries with their professional development. And as that happens, we try to make sure that we retain them. And at the same time, we provide really amazing benefits. And so, for some, we'll call it younger kids, it may not be necessarily as attractive. If you're 22 years old, you don't have kids, you don't have a spouse. But, for people who have been around the block once or twice, they tend to appreciate the overall package that we offer.
Fair enough. So with being here in North Carolina and Asheville, so like with politics and regulations, has that been decent for you then? It sounds like the ex-senator helped you guys out. Have you ever been like, I wish I was in Texas or New York? I don't know. Is there some place that's better for doing this kind of thing?
So, yeah, Congressman Taylor, I think he got the ball off the ground. I am immensely grateful. It was also well before my time. But, the fact is, the overall regulatory environment, it is what it is. And, the fact is, I do not have a deep lobbying department. In fact, I have a lobbying department of 0. So I can't, if there is something that I disagree with, I might be able to voice my opinion every once in a while, but we can't. It's hard to fight. So what we try to do is we just try to be the best that we can be, and let our work speak for itself, and hopefully that buys us a little bit of grace.
Fair enough. Okay, so we've been going for about an hour, so we'll kind of wrap it down a little bit. One of the final questions. So IPv6, 2100, 2200, when are we going to get there?
We allocate IPv6.
You allocate, but I mean...
Oh, and
no, I mean, like...
And people are using it.
Okay.
Not a lot of people. But
yeah. No, but I mean, like one of the jokes I make. So I went through my MCSE in 1999. My instructor literally looked at us, and one of our tests at the time was TCP/IP4, and our instructor said, "Look, this kind of sucks for you guys. You're going to have to learn this. In a couple of years, it's going to be obsolete because we're going to be on IPv6. But you know, it is how it is. That's how the tech world goes." In YouTube, I did a video in 2009 laughing about that and how we were still on TCP/IP4. But, you know, by 2020, we'd be to IPv6. It's now 2023, and I guess cell phones. I mean, we actually are using IPv6 for a lot of things where you don't realize it. But at the end of the day, we're still using IPv4 for way too much.
Are you using it in your home network?
Well, it's probably it's a tunnel. It's probably an IPv4 tunnel through IPv6. But I'm still using a Class C subnet and port forwarding and all that kind of stuff.
So, yeah, ultimately, I think that IPv6 will end up being used here in America at some point. You know, it is, you know, on a more wide scale, general basis. It's just not as intuitive. You know, it's a lot of characters. I mean, I could rattle off an IPv4 address off the top of my head for dozens of different devices or servers or who knows what. But yeah, it would be a little bit more of a lift to remember just one or two IPv6 addresses.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, but IPv6 now, I mean, that was supposed to be the future 30 years ago. But the funny thing is, I don't hear about, I guess there is IPv10. Like, we don't hear about any of the other, like, where's IPv20? Like, are we going to get to IPv20 before 6 comes around, or?
I don't know. No, but, you know, the funny thing is IPv4 has continued to become, you know, more and more valuable. I mean, the cost of a single public Class C is 5 figures. I mean, it's amazing. A few years ago, it was $2,000. You know, and that was if you got permission to purchase on the auction market, you know, a Class C. Now, you know, it's, you know, the price continues just to rise and rise, and it will continue to. So.
And then, since you actually run an ISP, so we hear all this stuff about network neutrality, and I hear from a lot of people that don't deal with networks that all packets need to be treated equal, obviously, which sounds like an utterly absurd idea to me. So you actually running an ISP, does network neutrality just make sense? Whether or not you agree with it, does even the concept make sense to you? And how do you kind of fall on the whole network neutrality world?
Now you're mixing philosophy and politics. And they don't necessarily always go hand in hand. So I think, generally speaking, that we should not be intentionally slowing or blocking traffic across the internet. The internet. But at the same time, you know, there are carriers and there are networks that are not carriers that may, you know, that have built out their networks and spent a lot of money doing so. Do I think that they should potentially have the ability to, you know, prefer, for example, their own internal traffic? The answer is yes. I mean, at what point do you, for example, say, net neutrality? You have your management network that's preferred over general internet traffic? Or, why is, certain internet traffic, de-preferred relative to, certain private transport circuits? I don't know how far down the rabbit hole people really want to go when it comes to this. I think personally, there's been a huge back and forth within the industry, within the wider tech sector, as well as in Washington and in state regulatory agencies about where to start, where to stop, what's feasible, what's not feasible. And the fact is, if you were to go down this rabbit hole, internet would have to be a regulated service, and in ways that it is not today. So that will most probably take an act of Congress. I do not see that happening anytime soon. With that being said, it's something that I just don't really worry about too much. So,
well, I mean, I guess that's one of the things is like with the BitTorrent. People,
all of my lobbyists are on it.
Well, no, but we hear like BitTorrent shouldn't be slowed down. And I mean, I have buddies of mine, especially when I was young, where they were just data hoarders. They just get on there and they just BitTorrent movies, entire libraries of movies for the hell. They don't even watch it. I don't even know what they're doing. Does that kind of thing affect
That's illegal.
Well, I know it's illegal. But if somebody was doing it on your network, does that actually degrade your network? Do you actually have any functional problems with people literally using truly too much bandwidth?
No. We have a very capable network. We're very proud of it.
Okay, fair enough. And then with this, so since you're in this business, maybe you don't care. So with the whole thing with network neutrality, would you prefer to be regulated as a telco, or do you like the datacom world?
So, if things were to change in 2024 and we became a regulated entity, I think we would adjust just fine. It would not impact us. I mean, we are regulated to some degree or another, do not be mistaken, and by different entities. But the fact is, we're going to continue to do everything that we do and try to continue to push the envelope, try to push deeper inside the region, take care of our customers, take care of our communities, and try to help improve the entire region. I don't see being regulated or not regulated as changing our overall long-term mission and our drive. So.
And so the technical question. So what we hear from Verizon and AT&T and all these companies that have now bought Hulu and NBC is that dumb pipes are a bad business. But apparently you seem to like dumb pipes. So is that a problem with you? Is that a problem with them? Like why do you want to be in a business that we're told is a bad business to be in?
I'm dumb?
I can sometimes be the answer.
No. No, the fact is, I think that there's waves in business. I mean, do you remember, scrolling back a few years, back to when dinosaurs roamed the earth and Time Warner Cable was independent? AOL existed? I don't know. Does it in any way, shape, or form anymore? But, AOL bought Time Warner cable, right? You know, for the integration, and mind you, it wasn't just Time Warner cable, but it was the whole Time Warner library. It was all their content. They wanted to see what they could do to help, you know, create this vertical stack. Didn't go very well. You know, the fact is, in a lot of instances, these, economies of scope, you know, the vertical stacks, they sound really great on paper. They might even create some value for a period of time, but only if there is, you know, synergies realized, some sort of execution that must take place on the backside of a transaction. And sometimes the transaction is much more exciting than execution. So I do think that there's value in some vertical integration, but at the end of the day, you know, having the pipe out to the business, out to the, you know, to the customer's home, that is going to be, at the end of the day, it's going to be valuable. That's going to be what continues to drive, for example, monthly recurring revenue. So, but, you know, from there, yeah, you can layer on ancillary services like this newfangled thing called telephone or video services. Believe it or not, people still want something that looks and feels like linear cable TV. So I think there's still a place for layered services. Do I think that it's going out and spending tens of billions of dollars on, you know, a platform X, Y, or Z? That's a little out of my ballpark at the moment. Why do we have a refresh in about 5 years?
There you go. Fair enough. So then, I guess one of the final questions then. So if you were 18, or if you had an 18-year-old kid right now, and they wanted to get into technology, from your viewpoint, where would you push them? Where do you think the exciting place to be in technology right now is?
Realistically, I know the question that you're asking. I think the right answer is I would not push them. I would tell them to figure out what excites them, what they want to wake up every single day learning about, continuing to grow within, and hopefully make a living at it. So,
well, let's say ERC just blew up tomorrow, got bought by AT&T, and you had to reskill. You had to go back out on the job market. So in 2023, like what would you be thinking? Like, yeah, I think this is.
I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I love what I do. Realistically, what I'd probably do is I'd probably want to work with entrepreneurs. I'd probably want to help entrepreneurs with their business plans and get them, you know, help them find the resources to be successful. Maybe throw out a crazy question here or there that makes them chew on things. You know, I think that, I love the tech sector. I love telecom. but I was an engineer in undergrad, corporate and debt finance guy in grad school. I love playing around in Excel like nobody's business. I love building business cases and munging numbers. But I see IT as being an enabler for everything. And so it really comes down to not necessarily what path in IT, it's how do you leverage everything at your disposal to try to figure out your way to the end. And yeah, I think that's what gets lost so often. Not to digress, but businesses that look at IT as a cost center, that's where they've missed the boat. IT is the enabler for most every organization out there to figure out how to do X better and hopefully be a little bit more profitable or more capable or competitive or whatever else. So.
Yeah, I do remember back, again, my MCSE instructor in 1999 said, yes, one of the problems is we are currently seen as a cost center. But don't worry, when IPv6 comes around, we'll be seen as a profit center.
So we're still waiting.
Yeah. So the final question before we get to the peanut gallery questions. Are you hiring?
So we actually we just hired, I think it was last month. We just hired one person. We don't currently have positions posted, but I see us hiring over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, without a doubt. On the customer service side, field techs, I'm sure that we're going to be adding to our network team. This is, it's a growing organization.
So do you do coffee, like informational interviews? If somebody came up to you and wanted a cup of coffee, would you sit down with them?
I actually spend a lot of time talking to people all over the place. I also do make sure that that the team leads, are talking with people. I try to make sure that I stay engaged out in the community, though, at large.
Yeah, cool. Okay, Tomer, you're up. So, does anybody have questions then?
Can I ask a non-technical question?
I don't know, can you?
I had a whole bunch of questions scribbled down here, but Brad, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the thought process and feedback that you got from customers and employees while going through the decision to recast ERC Broadband from the nonprofit world into the for-profit world.
At the end of the day, we really haven't heard much. That we really haven't. It's been incredibly smooth as people have heard about any sort of a transition. It's been very complimentary. If anything, I think our prices have actually gone down. The bandwidth that we're offering has gone up. We've added staff, which hopefully has also improved overall, service. And I think realistically, it's just been a very easy and good transition. We've built more infrastructure as a result as well, and everything's just been good.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
One more.
Oh.
Bradley, you spoke about the barriers of polls and permits and that money is a major driving to the deployment of infrastructure. But the money that's coming down through all these layers of government is going to underserved, unserved areas. What could be done to provide a more competitive environment so that we reduce the telecom monopoly feeling?
So that's a very good question. I appreciate it. I'm curious how you came up with such a question. The fact is, the process right now is built possibly about as well as it can be, but it is still in part flawed because there's a system for selection, there's a system for eligibility, and there are ways that systems can be used and or abused. I think that the state, I think that counties, I think the feds are doing an amazing job of trying to deploy an unprecedented amount of money into a specific purpose. I think that it's going to make a huge difference, but I think that there's still going to be pockets that are missed, and in part because certain carriers, can erroneously, perhaps, claim that certain areas are covered. Whether they are, or perhaps not, maybe aren't at the level that they are claiming to be served at, which will then block, funding for the foreseeable future from being deployed in that footprint. Separately, we've seen over the past, I think week or two, that some number of RDOF recipients, for example, are asking for more money or more time to be able to, complete their bills. But those RDOF footprints are also ineligible from being given new rounds of monies. And we may not know for years to come whether those award recipients will complete their obligation. On top of that, at the end of the day, if there's 30 or 50% match requirements for certain grants, that may also make certain business cases just not feasible still for smaller private networks. And even if it's a 50% match, a 2-to-1, a 2-to-1 money multiplier is fantastic, but only if your time horizon for payback is still acceptable. And this industry, it's expensive. I mean, it is to go out and lay infrastructure. It is a very it's an uphill battle some days. When you look at at the end of the day, let's call it potentially loaded cost to run a mile of fiber could end up being, if done properly, when you consider a aggregate of aerial and underground and make ready and permits and easements and this, that, whatever, you're realistically, you're probably talking about over $50,000 per mile. And that's that may or may not be connecting any customers, generating any real money. There's just no telling. So it's an expensive business to be in. Is that an acceptable answer? Okay, thank you.
Just a question. Kind of expand on that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the cost breakdowns as to where they are? Is it in the actual fiber optic or is it regulation? And then additionally, can we expect that cost to decline over time like we've seen with solar or different technologies as it expands?
So I've been in telecom about 25 years, and I don't think that the real cost has come down all that much. At the end of the day, you know, the cost for the actual fiber optic cable it's not crazy expensive, but you still have to place it. So, you know, if you're going underground, you're talking about, most likely, you're talking about boring. If you're looking at trunk lines, and boring is expensive. You know, we're talking about underground point-to-point boring, and that is just to place path. So we're talking about little duct. Then you have to blow, you know, what we call mule tape through that duct, and it's effectively just high tensile string, you know, ribbon. And then you actually have to pull the fiber through. And the longer the path, the segment that you're pulling through, the harder it is. At the end of each of those, either you have to have a handhold, which is another expense, you have to have a pull box, or maybe you are literally just going to bury, you know, segment interconnects. But it's, you know, but at the end of the day, you then have to splice. Splicing, realistically, is expensive. You know, labor ends up costing more than the fiber itself, but every one of these elements in the process costs a lot of money. And, you know, you've got trunk line, you've got distribution, you have the access and or drop side of things, you've got the equipment to light all of it. And when we say light, and earlier I talked about lasers, you literally have equipment that's shooting, you know, in some cases, very high power lasers down this glass that is smaller than a human hair. You know, the sort of precision that is needed to really ensure a solid fusion splice to connect two fibers together or to terminate a fiber, it's impressive. And you have to do that from whether it's a central office, a head end, a point of presence, whatever you want to call it, where the big equipment is, out to a customer site. You may have dozens of splices that you have to go into a handhold, pull out a large splice case. If we're talking about existing infrastructure, go into the splice case, preferably at night during a safe time window, to go interconnect to specific human hairs, and, you know, try to make sure that you do not break anything else that is operating, that maybe has hospital traffic, or who knows what, right? But you may have to do that over and over and over just to turn up a single circuit. You know, that's one of the reasons why trying to build a network, you know, with forethought is really important if you can. you always have to go back and do work, but if you can try to plan things in advance, it saves time, but it also means that your upfront costs are a lot higher if you're planning with that much more fiber going out to different neighborhoods or parts of the community that you may not build off of for 5 to 10 years into the future. So it's, when it comes to permitting, when it comes to whatever, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes if a pole is too congested, you buy the pole, or effectively a pole replacement, so that you have, the space to be able to attach. And depending upon how many others are on that pole, you may have to pay for them to either move on a pole, to a different position, or to move to the new pole that you also just bought. In addition to, the power that's on there, and if there's 3-phase, or if it's a T-bone pole that has multiple legs coming off of it, it's a much more complicated game than most people realize.
So you said you were into finance in the past. Do you feel like that's played a role in your ability to make these 5 to 10 year bets? And if so, how?
I am absolutely certain that it's helped me along the way, just having certain skills, but I think that before I ever went to grad school, I think most people would have called me anal or particular when it came to numbers and whatnot. But I certainly believe that it probably gave me a few extra tools in my toolbox. And it's, it probably has given me a little bit greater confidence in being able to see the long game through. It's probably the best way to put it.
And you've also talked a lot about the physical stresses and challenges of your business. But I imagine there's also an information side of your business that is equally interesting and complex and vast. Is that where you draw your profit and ability to innovate from? Because I imagine you don't innovate at all, or at least very quickly, on the hardware side of things, right?
So, so there's a, I think I mentioned it at least in passing. So there's the physical plant and having that built to certain specifications as per our network design and architecture. But it works hand in hand with the network engineering. So, I don't know how, geeky everybody is in here, but on the OSI model, yeah, you have layer 1. That's the physical layer, and it goes from physical to, effectively the transport and the routing, and yada yada yada. So you think about TCP/IP. That's transport. That's switch transport. Routing is at layer 3. You go all the way up for any sort of communication, data communication. It goes all the way up to application layer, which is 7. I think a couple of people on the team, also throw in layers 8 and 9, which is religion and politics. Sometimes they tell me that that's my job to go deal with and figure out which one is which. But, kind of, layers 1, 2, and 3 really go hand in hand together. But it's how do you, do you choose to have a linear, unprotected shot between this community and that? And if you want it to be protected, how do you protect it? Do you protect it with a layer 2 protocol? Do you transport your network traffic at layer 3? At what distribution points do you have protected nodes, which then might have many protected rings, miniature protected rings that shoot off from that, maybe going to another distribution point, or maybe looping back around to the same one. So on the network side, we had an equally exciting, exciting side to the network. That's where our Cisco equipment, CNN equipment, our optical transport gear comes into play, and how we choose to protect and potentially protect in different ways in different parts of the network or for particular types of traffic. And it's a heck of a lot of fun. I think probably the one space that I get the most enjoyment out of is where I am still a very I like to think that I'm a valued participant in architecture and design discussions or troubleshooting when it comes to translating between layers 1 and layers 2, 3. I also play around in layer 0, which doesn't really exist, but that's like power and bonding, grounding, environmentals, which really plays a much bigger part in this whole equation than people realize. But I think that realistically, the layer 1 side is so often overlooked by people in IT. It's kind of funny. So many people just say, "Oh yeah, just put some wire on the ground, string it up on the poles, you're good." It is so much more technical. It is so much more technical and time consuming, and it is not fixed with, "Oh, darn, I messed that up. Let me change my config on the line." It's sometimes it's a much you mess up on layer 1, and it's a much bigger issue to correct, or just time consuming. So, but yeah, we have fun with it all. And then there's a lot of systems and analysis to make sure that the network is healthy, and that we try to make sure that we detect issues weeks or months before they actually cause problems. We try to make sure that we're proactive in resolving things before customers ever realize that they could have happened.
Any more questions? You got one last one, Chris?
I do, if nobody else is gonna.
We'll finish with Chris. Yeah.
Going once, going twice. Thanks for being here, Sarah. It's good to see you. Back to earlier, you talked a little bit about employee compensation and taking into account some of the market forces here. I'm just kind of curious, when you guys look at compensation for your team members, do you look at strictly Asheville market compensation for comparables, or do you look at a broader market basket that might include metro areas like Atlanta and Raleigh when setting compensation levels? And the reason I bring that up is it's a frequent conversation in this building, in the halls and around the coffee pot and in the meeting rooms about tech, just general compensation in the Asheville market, but especially for technology roles. And I've always been a big advocate for employers focusing not on trying to do comps in just the Asheville market, but look at making sure we're being competitive with salaries in places like Atlanta and Raleigh. And I'm wondering if that's a thought that pervades your planning and your compensation models.
It's a good question. And not to go into specifics, but the fact is I think that every single person on the team could go to a larger market and make more money. Perhaps to a larger market that costs less to live in and make more money. But I try to make sure that whether it's salary or the overall compensation package is never a reason why anybody would ever consider leaving. In fact, my hope is that nobody will ever leave. But really, at the same time, we do not have a 100% perfect hiring record. And that's okay. And in some cases, it's just not, where people want to be for the rest of their careers or lives. And that's okay. But I try to make sure that compensation is never an issue, a question. I like to think that we pay, at least market rate, if not higher. I think our benefits are potentially amongst the best of private employers. And I think that's about the best way for me to describe it. And I try to make sure that people have fun. So.
Okay, well, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, is there any... Is there any final parting you want to say?
No matter what you do in life, make sure that you love it. Go in every single day and just have fun, move the rock a little bit further, and be good.
Fair enough. Okay. So the next one of these, we do these second Tuesday of every month. So we have Alex, what is it, Netguard? I keep screwing up the name. Netmaker. Anyways, he's a Y Combinator graduate. They got like $2.5 million in funding. So he's going to be here for the September one of these. So if you're interested, make sure to sign up on the meetup. And I guess we're done. Cool. So.
Thank you very much.